people thought it was nuts. I was told in my breastfeeding class that colostrum collection prior to birth was useless, that it was silly, and don't stress people out about it. And yet, now we know that it can actually be beneficial. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Lavonne, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you haven't seen my video on what is colostrum, make sure you watch that because I talk about all the benefits of colostrum in general. But today, I'm gonna share with you the recommendations, the potential benefits, and all about colostrum harvesting or colostrum collection prior to birth. I will just say, as a labor and delivery nurse and someone in the medical world, this is not popular yet in the medical world, but this is like up and coming medicine, up and coming research. I was just recently at a nursing conference and they had like a whole session on colostrum collection, whereas like 10 years ago when I first started, people thought it was nuts. I was told in my breastfeeding class that colostrum collection prior to birth was useless, that it was silly, and don't stress people out about it. And yet now we know that it can actually be beneficial for you, for your baby. And so I want to talk about all the risks, who it's recommended for, who it's not recommended for. And then I'm going to come back for a part 3, or really just another video on how to collect your colostrum if after you watch this video you're like, yeah, I'm in, let's try it. So I will teach you how in the next video. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. Now, what is colostrum collection? All it is, and you learned in part 1 that colostrum is the first milk. And so what you would do is you would collect, meaning manual express your breast prior to giving birth. Now, my caveat for this that I mentioned in part 1 is we do not expect to see any milk prior to birth. Okay, so part of this is actually just priming the breast. It's like getting things moving. It's stimulating the breast to be able to know what to do to set it up for once the baby's out and the placenta's delivered, which is really the trigger for your body to release the milk, to actually have the milk and release the milk. Okay, you've had milk since week 14 of pregnancy, so don't stress about that. It's been brewing in there and just like soaking in all the yummy nutrients. It's ready to go. But if you don't see anything from doing this, that is not abnormal, all right? Especially if it's your first baby. If it's your second baby and you've breastfed before, I would expect you to see more, okay? Now, colostrum collection prior to birth can help set you up for a potentially easier breastfeeding experience. If you're really stressed about breastfeeding and you really want it to go well, maybe you have multiples in there and you know that you have 2 babies coming and you're like, I want to breastfeed them both, that your body's gonna be required to do more milk than if it was just one baby, right? Or especially if you have gestational diabetes. That's usually the time that I like actually have a conversation with my clients who have gestational diabetes, and I'm like, let's talk about colostrum collection because it can set you up if you know you're gonna have a planned C-section, if you know your baby's gonna go to the NICU, or you're just like really excited about breastfeeding and you wanna set yourself up for success and sort of like get in a rhythm, and this sounds sexy to you, okay? All those reasons would be reasons to do it prior to labor and birth. Now, what you're gonna do is you'll express and then you will save the colostrum that you get and put it in the freezer so that it's off and away, and then you have it available once baby's born. We know that it takes a while for your body to figure out how to produce more and more milk. You actually have to tell the body/brain to be like, someone's drinking the milk, make a little more next time, and then they make a little more, and then you tell it again, and then you make a little more, and then you give it time, and then you make a little more, okay? Until your milk comes in, well, day 3, 4, 5, your breasts grow, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, now I got all the milk in the world, but it takes a few days to get there. And so, especially in the instances of the things that I mentioned, it might be helpful. In fact, in most instances, it's always helpful to know that you have your milk on hand so that if your baby needs it, you're like, I'm trying to express and I don't have much. And then you're like, but wait, I got a backstash. I got a stash in my freezer at home, hopefully. Now, I do want to mention the gestational diabetes piece because while there's other reasons, you have multiples, planned C-section, NICU, you sort of want to set yourself up, gestational diabetes is actually like a medical reason. And this is why I do recommend it for my clients, because The way the disease process for gestational diabetes works is that your baby actually is responding to potentially high blood sugar during your pregnancy. And how they do that is they make their own insulin. Insulin lowers the blood sugar, right? If there's a lot of sugar, you eat a bunch of candy, your body's like kicking out insulin to be like, hold on, don't go crazy. Don't keep your blood sugar all the way up here. Keep it regulated. Now in gestational diabetes, that whole process is disrupted. And so I actually have 2 videos on gestational diabetes. We can also link down below that you can find and learn all about that. Either way, the risk is that because your baby's been kicking out all this extra insulin to lower your blood sugar throughout the pregnancy potentially, which is why we want your sugar regulated and you're not doing a lot of highs and lows, at birth, they are at risk for low blood sugar, because the moment you remove baby from you and no longer sharing a blood supply, they're just dealing with their normal bodies, right? And they're kicking out too much insulin that instead of it being regulated, it's like, lower the blood sugar. Wait, I don't need that anymore. But their body doesn't know that they need that anymore. And so all that being said, they're at risk for lower blood sugar. And so for our gestational diabetic parents, once they give birth, as the nurse, it's much more on our radar that we're like, all right, skin to skin, because that helps regulate sugar. And then like, let's get the baby on. Versus if you don't have gestational diabetes, we're not quite as concerned. 4 to 6 hours, potentially more, before the baby has to eat for blood sugar reasons. Whereas for a gestational diabetic parent, we're talking like within the first hour is ideal. Now, if you have some colostrum, you have milk. And so immediately you're a lot less stressed about their blood sugar potential issues if you already have that milk saved. I hope that makes sense. All right. Now, again, the research is up and coming. This is kind of like a new sexy thing. I will say that like in the OBGYN world of labor and birth, breastfeeding isn't the most sexy thing for them. And so in general, for medical stuff, they say it takes 10 years for us to get up to date. But I will say that for breastfeeding, in my opinion, that like it's going to take even longer. And so you might get pushback from your provider, your doctor. You might get pushback from your midwife. I would say probably less chance from a midwife than a doctor. You might even have your nurses look at you and you're like, I harvested my colostrum. They might be like, okay, because this is new. This is like fresh stuff. You're like ahead of the game over here, okay? But what I will say is that there's a lot of research and there's really very little risk, which leads me to what are the risks for harvesting your colostrum prior to giving birth? The biggest risk is preterm contractions. And so the recommendation is that you are not starting this before 36 weeks and you really are starting it. Lots of places it says 36 to 37 weeks is when you would start. You do it 1 or 2 times a day to help stimulate the breast. My caveat to this is, again, you're talking to your provider, you're like getting some medical advice on this. Even like the American Academy of Pediatrics doesn't even really have a recommendation. They just say feed your baby breast milk, which is like very basic. That I'm going to say pushing towards the 37-week mark. Now, is this going to cause labor? If it does, in my opinion, from everything that I know about the physiology of labor, your body was close. It's like the same thing as if you have an orgasm or you do other forms of nipple stimulation or like strip the membranes, for instance, right? And if you want those videos, let me know. But you do some of those things and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. If they work, it's like your body was just ready and it just needed that little jump start into labor, okay? But because we're stimulating the nipples and because we're removing breast milk, that releases or helps your body release its own natural oxytocin, and oxytocin causes contractions. And so we don't want to do this too early. And if you've had a risk for preterm birth or you've been told that we want to avoid labor, or even sometimes like if you have any kind of complication of pregnancy, this one's not publicly listed, but from my nurse brain makes sense, like a placenta previa. We don't want to stimulate contractions, potential bleeding, complications, none of that. And so talk to your provider if you're interested about this around your 35 to 37 week visit. All right. And then the other one always for me is if your provider advises against it, and they may look at your medical history and be like, nah, I don't recommend it because I'm worried about causing premature contractions. Now, once your term, 37, 38 weeks, if you go into labor, you go into labor, right? Your baby's fully cooked in there. They're ready to go. And so it may actually help to release oxytocin and prime or soften your cervix. It actually does. There is some evidence out there that nipple stimulation or colostrum collection, which are kind of the same thing, help soften the cervix, and you potentially do give birth earlier. Flex and flow on that one, okay? But reality is that this is an option for you for the goal of having that milk, decreasing your stress, helping set you up for successful breastfeeding. If you have gestational diabetes, helping with that and setting you up there. I will say leave it at home. And again, I'll come back and talk about like storage and all of that in the next part when I like tell you how to do this. And ultimately, this is really your decision, right? Talk to your provider about it. If they don't recommend against it and you're like, yeah, that sounds great, let's go, then make sure you subscribe down below so you can come back for the next video and I will share with you how to do this ahead of time. I don't usually share my opinion that much or like what I would personally do, but I will say that with this, I used to be kind of naysay. And it was mostly because of my training and sort of like, what's the point? The placenta's not out. And I like kind of had a bad attitude about it. And I will say that I am an evolving person and I love to read and I love to be up on the times. And I can't really deny that not only is the evidence there and there's plenty going on that it can be beneficial to you, but I've also seen it really, really help families right after they give birth to lower their stress and then know that they have that on hand. If you want more from me, go ahead and subscribe down below. Head on over to bundlebirth.com. I have a bundle birth class there where I do talk you through breastfeeding, like the basics of breastfeeding, postpartum, and then obviously all the labor stuff, coping with labor, VBAC class, newborn safety class. I have a couple really cool freebies down below, so make sure you grab those. Check out the description box. There's lots going on. We'd love to support you. If you've had your baby and you're anticipating having your baby, add your baby to our wall of babies. It's our way to celebrate you, for you to showcase your baby, share your story, and be a part of the bundle birth community. And then until next time, don't forget to flex and flow, and I will see you so soon. Bye. 13, y'all. 13. That hurt. That's a lot. I looked at myself. It's very distracting.